Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us this evening here on Live Chat with Josie. I speak to one phenomenal woman, a woman who wears so many crowns. She's a queen that wears a lot of crowns. She is none other than Ambassador Justina Mutale, all the way from Zambia, but she is based in the UK. Good evening, Ambassador. How are you doing?
Good evening, Josie. The UK is very hot today. I think it's about 30 degrees Celsius. So you can imagine how hot that must be for the people that have lived in the UK or other cold climates for such a long time. And also for my age, there's other issues as well. So it is quite hot, but it's nice, sunny, and beautiful. That I can say. And I know that we kind of have the opposite in Africa. My sister has been telling me just how cold
Yes.
it is in Zambia, and that in South Africa it's been snowing and things like that. So but England is nice, beautiful, and hot, but a little bit too hot for some of us.
Oh, wow, Ambassador, and you are looking amazing. I mean, and when you talk about African weather, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Southern Africa has the best weather in the world.
Yes.
All right, so it's a culture here on Live Chat with Josie. I know you very much. A lot of people know you, but we will always have that little percentage of people that might be saying, who exactly is this woman? So who is Ambassador Justina Mutale?
God, I always find it very hard to kind of introduce myself and say who I am. First of all, I am just Justina Mutale. I think that's the easiest thing that I can say. I have been brought up to be very modest in the way I handle the world, but also I find it quite in a way, a little bit unsettling that I should be calling out my accolades myself. So I normally try to hold off on those things. There's so many things that have happened in my life, so many honors and accolades and titles and things that come along my way. Sometimes I get surprised when I see them presented to me. And I think what I can say is that I am Justina Mutale. I am from Zambia. I am a mother. I am a woman. I am an immigrant living in the living in the UK, and I suppose my claim to fame to do with Africa is that in 2012 I was honored as African Woman of the Year on a very high and prestigious platform where we had heads of state and presidents from Africa. In fact, the first recipient of the honor or award from that platform was the Bishop Desmond Tutu.
Desmond Tutu.
So at the time that I was being honored, we had people like the Right Honorable Joyce Banda when she was president of Malawi, and we also had the Right Honorable Thokozani Kupe when she was Deputy Prime Minister of Zimbabwe. So you can imagine the how prestigious that platform was. And then I was honored as African Woman of the Year on that platform. I think for Africa, that is what I can say. The other thing is that having been honored as African woman then placed a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, you know.
No, you just hold it there because I have a question when it comes to that. So on Google, it says acclaimed as one of the most influential and inspirational women of African origin. That is none other than Dr. Justina Mutale as the African Woman of the Year 2012. You told me that on that platform there was Bishop Desmond Tutu, African heads of state. It was an amazing day for you. But how did you feel when you were bestowed that honor on the same platform with such high dignitaries?
Well, to begin with, I was quite taken aback and I was surprised. Let me just say, when I received the nomination letter, I read it several times and I thought, oh, okay, you know, with awards and honors and all that, you have to have a list of nominees. And I thought, well, I was just making up the numbers so they can say that the people nominated in this category are blah, 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 blah. But then I thought, if there are these names and all that, let me just go so I can mingle with these people. I can mingle with
But what do you think? But what do you think you had done exactly to deserve such an honor?
Yeah, so yeah, as I was saying, so I said, I really thought somebody was trying to play some game with me, but I told my friend, I said, let's just go so we can mingle with these people, these high profile people, these heads of state and everybody. Let's go, and we went there, and then when it came to call out the winners, and they called my name for African Woman of the Year. I was totally unprepared. Even when they called me to go to the stage and read the winner's speech and all of that, but I did find myself talking about how Africa should write their own stories, blah 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 blah. But all of that in total shock. But backstage, I went back and asked the organizers. I said, how come you selected me to you give me this this award when there are so many prominent African women there? And the thing is that they told me that I have achieved what I have achieved using on my own 2 feet, depending on myself and what I can do myself and with my networks. Whereas the others, as I have said, there were a lot of heads of state, people from different governments and all that. So they told me that for other people, they have the government machinery to enable them to do what they were doing.
Okay.
I was doing it as myself, as Justina, on my own 2 feet. And that is why they thought, this must be the African woman. If you know African women, even the ones that live in the village, can move the world given an opportunity. So that is how I became African Woman of the Year. I was surprised.
Amazing. It's about 8 years ago, but still I'll say congratulations, because after that I am so sure watching you every time a lot of doors open for you. But so for that year, 2012, what did your reign partake? What were you supposed to do as the African Woman of the Year?
Well, there's nothing that the people that give you the award state that you need to do. It's they gave me as African Woman of the Year. Like I said, so many responsibilities, and I had already been working on my own projects in gender, trying to fight for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. And of course, I had a worldwide campaign which still runs up to today. It started as a campaign to stop the spread of HIV and AIDS, and we've been working with young people all around the world. We have ambassadors all over the world working with beauty queens and models, beauty queens and celebrities as effective advocates for young people, because we know that in the 21st century, young people are totally besotted with people in the limelight. So we thought we would use these people to bring this message so that we can take away the stigma of people living with HIV and AIDS. But then I thought, now I've become African Woman of the Year. How do I really, with to whom much is given, much is expected. And I thought, what can I do with this? So eventually, later on, I started the Justina Mutale Foundation to empower young women and girls from Africa, of which we have four co-programs on that, which is enabling young women and girls in political participation, in economic empowerment. We also hold conferences, and we also do training programs on entrepreneurship and training programs. But also I went back and sat back and I thought, how do we really empower the girls? Because even under these four programs that we have, other people have been doing it. As you know, there's no one is rebuilding the recreating the wheel, reinventing the wheel. A lot of things have already been done. So all you need is to kind of improve on those things. So I think my flagship, the way I believe it, is the scholarship program that comes with the Justina Mutale Foundation, where we offer university scholarship programs for we started with underprivileged young women and girls from rural areas, from poor families, but they who show academic promise and academic excellence, but come from poor families that cannot afford to send them to university, whether it's within their same country or anywhere else, because we know that African governments cannot do everything.
But what exactly was the inspiration behind starting that foundation, Dr. Mutale?
Yes, so
like what was the reason, the main reason that really pushed you to start that foundation?
Okay, so the main reason that really pushed me to start that foundation was that previously, before I went out in the world to speak, I used to work in the Commonwealth Secretariat, and I worked in the Commonwealth Secretariat, which is like a diplomatic setting, and it's a international intergovernmental development organization where countries that used to be colonies of the British Empire came together to help one another with technical assistance or any other assistance that comes along. But my final, I worked for over 10 years in there, but 20 years. But my final 10 years were confined to what we called social transformations program division, and more specifically, the gender section of that. So that was to deal with fighting for gender equality, of course, under the United Nations mandates, and mainstreaming gender in Commonwealth countries. So with that, every year while I was working at the United Nations, I used to, sorry, I haven't been able to share this on my page. I used to.
No, it's fine. We'll give you a link later. Yeah.
So our division, the gender section, every year we used to travel to the United Nations in New York to attend what is called the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. And this is the arm of the United Nations that would discuss how far women have come, where did they come from, and how far have they gone. So I had left the Commonwealth Secretariat to start on my own, to start the Positive Runway Global Catwalk to Stop the Spread, which is the HIV, the worldwide HIV/AIDS campaign. And then in 2015, I joined an organization for an organization for women who have got their own organization, so to speak. Anyway, so I ended up
organization behind.
Yeah, so
other organization,
like an umbrella organization. It's called the National Alliance for Women or something like that. But anyway, so we ended up going back to after a few years, after I left the Commonwealth Secretary, I ended up going back to the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. So then I observed that all the things that we had been talking about when I was working in the Commonwealth Secretariat were still issues being handled, since the what was called the Beijing Platform for Action, which was undertaken in 1995, when the women had this United Nations World Conference. If you remember, maybe you were too young, but this is the United Nations fourth United Nations Conference.
What year was that?
Of women.
What year was that?
That was 1995. You hadn't been born. But anyway.
No, come on. 1995 was like old already.
But that was 1995, and if I tell you, I remember that this is the time when African women came back from there wearing trousers. Those couldn't wear trousers.
Speaking of that,
they started wearing trousers. Let me just finish this bit. They came back wearing trousers, feeling empowered, so empowered that they believed they could wear the trousers in the house. And from there came a lot of divorces, marriages broke down because women started asking their husbands to cook or clean their house.
That news actually takes me back to Zimbabwe, where they're trying to amend the constitution, and that issue about gender is actually one of the issues. But
So when I went to the United Nations in 2015, it was the 59th session of the Beijing platform. I'm sorry, it was the 59th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, but we're review 20 years of the Beijing platform. And I knew what the Beijing platform had been about. So what shocked me there was that all the things that they had fought, we were intended, perhaps, women had fought for at the Beijing platform, had not been achieved. For example, I found that still there were no women at the high-level decision-making tables that drive the world. There were a lack of women's wealth in so many areas, in so many walks of life. And then to make it worse, I also found myself marching to something that was called, yet again, historical march.
On what?
For gender equality.
Okay, gender equality.
Yeah, so I thought, why are they calling it historical march for gender equality in 2015? Because in 1995, 20 years back, women marched. And also, if you go to your history, you find that I think it was in 1913 or 1911 when women marched even in South Africa. There was a lady called Charlotte, the Women's March in 1911 or 1913. So I came back from there and I thought, I don't really want to see, and that was then we were moving into the Sustainable Development Goals from the Millennium Development Goals. And the Millennium Development Goals had at their core women's empowerment, the empowerment of women and girls, and the achievement of gender equality. So now we are moving into the Sustainable Development Goals, again, re-emphasizing women, the empowerment of women and girls, and the achievement of gender equality. And I am thinking, why are we still marching on our feet? So I came back because I have a what I'd call a millennium baby. My baby was born in the year 2000, at the inception of the very ambitious Millennium Development Goals. Of course, we at their conclusion in 2015 had not achieved the gender equality and women's empowerment. And then I'm thinking, I don't want my baby and her peers at the conclusion of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030, when they'll be, you remember, at the conclusion of the Sustainable Development Goals, these, the children that were born at the beginning of the millennium, at the inception of the Millennium Development Goals, will be 30 years old. So they'll be the decision makers, there will be the policy makers, there will be the political leaders, there will be the business leaders, they'll be the ones leading at that time. And I am thinking, will the girl child, even in 2030, still have to march for gender equality? Because 2015 was the conclusion of the Millennium Development Goals, and 2016, the beginning of the Sustainable Development Goal. And I'm looking ahead and thinking at 2030, and I'm looking at my daughter and thinking, will she still be fighting for this that women have been fighting, my mother, my grandmother, myself, and all the children to come in the future? So I decided, I came back and I thought, as African Woman of the Year, I started my foundation, because I do not want to see my daughter, my millennium baby, and her peers ever marching on their feet again for gender equality. But anyway, I thought, well, you never know what comes in the future. Should they find it necessary to do so, I do not want to ever see them marching on their feet. I would want them to march with their mind, a mind fully equipped with the necessary knowledge, skills, qualifications, and global networks for them to be on equal footing with their male counterparts. Because what 2030 is aspiring to is what we are calling Planet 50-50. And this is where we hope to have 50% of women in each and every parliament in the world, 50% of women at the G8 or G7, 50% of women at the G20, 50% of women at every high-level decision-making table that decides the agenda of the world. So that is what prompted me to start the Justina Mutale Foundation. And also, you know, as African Woman of the Year, I thought this is the gift that I can give back to Africa.
Yes, but then Ambassador, I mean, Dr. Mutale, you are a woman, like I said before, a queen that wears a lot of crowns. Amongst the crowns that you've put on your dressing table in your bedroom, which one would you say was the most challenging and the most exciting crowns that you've worn?
First of all, I am from Zambia, and in 2012 or 2013, we had something called Zambians of Excellency Awards, and I was honored as a Pioneer Award. As you may be familiar with the saying that a prophet is not a prophet in their own homes, and you know that it's the people that are closest to you that kind of put you down or ignore the efforts that you are doing. And for me, that holds a special place in my heart, to be honored on a platform with other Zambians, with fellow Zambians. Of course, there were several other Zambians that were also honored, but to receive an honor and accolade from my own country people, I think that holds a very special place in my heart. And of course, the African Woman of the Year, to receive that because I am from Africa, and to be honored as African Woman of the Year, that holds a special place in my heart because Africa is my home when you go back. But I get so many that sometimes I get confused. In 2018, I was honored as Africa's best female philanthropist.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
congratulations.
and then I found myself listed on what is called most reputable Africans in the world. And the year after that, I was among the most reputable people on earth. Oh, these things keep showing.
Ambassador, you need to show me your shelf. You need to send me a picture with your shelf with all these accolades.
I should do that. So the latest one, that really, and I thought, oh God, I've heard them all after I'd been put in this, what was they called the most reputable people on earth. I thought, well, that's it. Then in 2020, my latest accolade, I think I've had a few in 2020, but the one that really surprised me, I got one where I was then inducted in the World Book of Greatness.
Yes, I saw that. I was like, what? This woman, I saw that. I saw that, and I was like, what is going on? You are unstoppable. Dr. Mutale, you are unstoppable. I saw that, and I said, tell me the story behind that, because I think I sent you a message. I don't remember, but when I saw that, I was really like, oh my word, this woman is someone to really look up to, an inspiration, a great mentor. And when I grow up, I want to be like you.
So yeah, with the World Book, getting into the World Book of Greatness, I think the organizers, again, of course, I did ask, oh my God, me, the World Book of Greatness? And they said, like you're saying, they had been following my footsteps and things I have been doing. And like in all of us, in fact, it says that we all have the greatness within us, and it's just for us to kind of bring it out. Bring it out into the world and do the things that require us to do the. And as far as they were concerned, all the things I have been doing, as I forgot to tell you something. Actually, there's another award like I am a god, as in.
Okay, wait. Let's finish this one, then we'll talk about that.
But this came before the before the World Book of Greatness. So the GOD is called Global. Initially, it was called Global Officials of Dignity, and that was given to us with whoever was honored there at the United Nations headquarters. It's not directly by the United Nations, but the event was held at the United Nations. And it had a lot of heads of state, rulers, kings and queens, and everybody there. So all of these things put together led to the organizers of the world, the people doing the World Book of Greatness, to put me in that book. I'm also an ambassador for peace. I am, of course, I'm a human rights activist, gender and human rights activist, and ambassador for peace and Africa Goodwill ambassador. And also, at some point, I was called a missionary for peace. So at my heart, I am a humanitarian. I try to, what I want to see is peace in the world. And
yes, ambassador on peace. You're an ambassador of peace. You're also a human rights. Did you say human rights activist?
Human rights activist and missionary.
Yes, so ambassador of peace and human rights activist. Let's go back to Africa. These are issues right now that are really a big problem. Yeah. So when we talk about especially human rights in many African countries, what are you doing as an activist to assure that human rights are respected. I will talk about even a country like Zimbabwe today. Human rights are not respected at all.
Let me tell you something. I am a student of international relations and politics and political science. So the Human Rights Convention from the United Nations, the basic human rights is the right to life, food, and shelter. And then a few others, the right to do this and the right to be who you want to be, including the right of assembly and all those kinds of things. But you find that no country, as far as I'm concerned, when I use my critical analysis, no country in the world can claim to be upholding the convention, the International Convention on Human Rights. Let's just go back of the past few weeks in the USA. Remember, the first human right is the right to life. And if you see how Black people are treated in the US, I remember very much, I am very surprised that people got up when what happened to George Floyd, of course, which was terrible and horrible and heartbreaking. But as a mother, to me, the time that women should have gotten up was when the 12-year-old child was shot because he was playing with his toy and the police thought that that was a gun. So already the United States of America, the proponents and advocates who claim to be the proponents and advocates of human rights do not observe human rights when it comes to Black people and other underprivileged people in those countries.
But Ambassador, I will hold you on that one. That like I asked you a question on Africa, and you're taking me to the US.
No,
This is the excuse. This is the excuse that Africans have every time when we talk about that. Oh, it's the US because they are doing that. Let's talk about Africa and let's not compare ourselves to.
You are misunderstanding me how the whole world works. You are misunderstanding me.
Make me understand, Ambassador.
You are misunderstanding. So tell me, what are the human rights violations in, for example, in Zimbabwe and the other parts of the Africa that you are talking about, so that we can equate them to the United Nations Convention on human rights. If you tell me that, then we can go through all of that. So tell me, what are the human rights that are not being upheld in Zimbabwe or in Zambia or in any other African country?
There is. Okay, I will talk about Zimbabwe. There is no freedom of speech. If you say something, you are tortured, you are arrested. A lot of people are abducted. A lot of people up to today are missing. There is Itai Zamara. I'm sure you are aware of that. A journalist, an activist, a human rights activist and journalist that disappeared a few years ago. Up to now, we don't know where he is. The list is endless. Food, like you said, life, food, and the third one, all those that shelter. There are people right now that are sleeping on the streets because of what is happening in the country today. There are a lot of people that are going to bed with no food. There is a lot on my Facebook page alone. You will see a lot of people asking for food, asking for donations.
Exactly. But can I take you back that we live in a world that we have something that we call global governance, and you know that at the moment Zimbabwe is under economic sanctions. When any country goes under economic sanctions, they have their oxygen cut off from that country by the international community. If you remember, this is what happens in a lot of countries when you have economic sanctions. There's something that we need to do as Africans. I'm talking from my critical analysis of how the whole global system works. So when I look at that, sometimes I think that, we need to go to the core of how was this created. If Zimbabwe did not have economic sanctions, how far would their economy go? Would people in Zimbabwe still be begging for food and things like that? So these are some of the things that, as African Woman of the Year, I'd like Africa to take a broader view. Of course, our leaders have got a responsibility to look after their people and give them the good life that they had promised them that they will get. And when we got this, what is called in quotation marks, political independence. And remember, we never ever, up to today, no African countries has ever had their own economic independence. And if you do not have economic independence, if you do not own the economy in your country, you do not own the land, especially if you do not own the land. The most valued asset for anybody in this world is land. And if your land is owned by foreigners, then you have no chance. You have no chance with the economy. If you have no chance with the economy, they will dictate that. Let me tell you something. As a student of international relations and political science, the multinationals dictate the politics of the world, whether it could be in the US, in the UK, in China, in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, anywhere else in the world. So we need to kind of go back to the core and see how were these problems created? Who is really creating these problems? Is it our own leaders? Our leaders being held at gunpoint that they really cannot do anything about this? Remember, for example, we have issues with China. I had been to China, and somebody came to me to talk about land that was available and all of that. And there was a clause there: as a foreigner, you cannot buy land in China. At the moment, America is trying to force Zimbabwe and South Africa to give back land to white settlers, what I call white settlers, because those people just came and settled. And of course, they just grabbed this land for which they never paid a penny for it. And if you, as an African now, you want to own that land, you have to pay for it and be given title deeds and blah, 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 all of that. But Black people up to now, after 400 years, are being harassed in the USA. So when you think of the international system as well, at the United Nations, we have the United Nations that came in there to try and look after the whole world, so everybody has peace and this and that. But there are only 5 countries that dictate what should happen in the world, and no African country sits at that table. So whatever problems you have, even when you take them to the United Nations, they are not resolved in the way that you actually want them to be resolved. So when you talk about human rights and people not having food in Zimbabwe, you have to look deeper. How did we come this way?
But Ambassador, which is a pity. Which is a pity that if you go to United Nations, your issue will not be addressed the way you want, because yes, I understand we've been on sanctions in Zimbabwe, but there is also a case of corruption. Just a few days ago, the health minister was behind bars simply because of COVID-19. He was purchasing COVID-19 PPEs in a shady manner, like exaggerating figures, something, a face mask that is supposed to cost only $5 or $2.50, I'm not sure, it was like $28. So despite the fact that we are under sanctions, the home is also burning. There is so much corruption. So you find that even if we've been on sanctions, even when President Mugabe was alive, and I know, I'm not saying sanctions are a good thing, but the little that we have as a nation, if we now at least use that to put ourselves in another stage, that would be at least, we will appreciate that as citizens. But then what is happening is, what is even destroying Zimbabwe more is corruption, Ambassador.
Yeah, but do you know that? Can you tell me what word you have in Zimbabwean, in whether it's in Ndebele or Shona, an equivalent word for corruption?
Could be Kuba.
Let me
Stealing.
tell you.
What is stealing in Zambia? Which language do you
You,
use in Zambia?
no. We are talking about corruption, not stealing. These are two
They are
different.
not stealing. So
Tell me exactly
corruption.
the word for corruption. So let me tell you something. So corruption in Africa is an acquired taste, so to speak. It is something that was brought to us. Remember, we are very young in this global governance and globalization. So to get independence, the people that led us to independence, of course, were coached in the way that now the new world, how you should run the world is this way and that way and all of this world. So at every stage, we don't, most African countries don't even have the equivalent of the word corruption. So this is
Now that you've asked, I'm trying to think
yeah,
that I've never.
exactly. Yeah, so that is why I asked. We don't have, not in my, I don't know, in my country, Zambia, I can,
I need to research.
yeah, exactly.
I
Because
need to research. I went to
I pride myself in,
ask
I went to school at a time when we were taught in
my
vernacular
fellow
local languages. So a lot of
Zimbabweans.
words, I know what it is, what they mean. But so far, for example, you are coming back with the word stealing. But corruption doesn't mean stealing. It's so we have all these complications in Africa that come with trying to follow a system that is not our own. To follow a system that is not our own. Yeah, if you remember the African philosophy, wherever you go in Africa, the African philosophy of Ubuntu is about sharing. In fact, in my mother's, in Zambia, in my country where I come from, we have a saying that says that you can always share food. The only thing, you can always share everything else, including food, with people, whoever comes to your house. The only thing you can't share are clothes, because the clothes, it's because of size or because of the size of the person. For example, I can't wear the size of the clothes that you wear, Josie. But for food, even if you had just one piece of groundnut, we can share it in half. That is the belief that Africans had before. Speaking as African Woman of the Year and someone vested in African history and African philosophy, the real Africans at the core of an African is one that shares everything that they have. It's one that knows that the suffering of others is our own suffering. It's one that knows that we all share one common human bond. It's one that knows that I cannot eat if the next person has not eaten. If you remember, there's a story about this anthropos I can't remember the word, sorry, English, it's not my language. But this guy, studying anthropology, went to Africa and he got these young people playing football, playing in the thing, and he said, oh, look, and I think he was he might have been from America, because America prides themselves on winners and all of these things. He put something there, maybe a bag of sweets or something, and said, whoever gets, and told them to run like a race. And whoever gets that whoever runs the fastest will get that as a prize. And he was shocked and surprised that the children held their hands together and ran towards that prize. And he said to them, but why are you doing
as a group?
So they ran towards that prize, and he was surprised and said, why are we doing this? And they said, if one of us is not happy, then we cannot happy. That is the genuine and indigenous mindset and behavior of African people. But then, because we have come out into the world, a world that we are new to, and we are still trying to find our feet, and being told that, oh, these things that you believed in and are wrong, that is not the way it's supposed to be. One of you should run faster than the others. Don't hold their hands. You just run and get that thing, and it will be for you, and leave your colleagues to suffer. So this is what has happened to Africa over the years. But anyway, now we are here. We are in the new system, and how do we handle this new system? How do we handle the new system? But of course, it's also to still try and go back to our African values and African cause. As you are talking, we really shouldn't be seeing other Africans suffering in the streets. Up to the time that I grew up and came to the UK, we still believed in extended families. If a family member died, you took in those children as your own and you brought them up. Then we had the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and then you have a family of about 12 grown-ups, each one with 5 or 10 children or whatever. All of them die and there's only one in the family left. Then they have to look about over 45 children. It was becoming difficult. So in the end, we end up with street kids, and it's a whole big problem and a real twist on what Africans believe in and the African way of life and the African belief in extended family and looking after one another and sharing that one peanut.
That is powerful, Ambassador. So coming back to our topic of the day as we conclude, you have touched on so many issues, and those with ears have heard and have learned today. But how can African women rise looking at the different circumstances in the continent today, Dr. Mutale?
Okay, so African women need to go back to who they used to be before. They need to go back and look at the women that lived before them. In fact, for thousands and thousands of years, African women were equal or even more superior to their men. So I was actually surprised when I grew up and came into the world to find that there's this fight for gender equality, because from where I come from in Zambia, in my mother's family, they are from the Namanga people of Northern Province. A woman still rules the kingdom. And also when a girl child is born, they are given their own name, a name that they carry until they die. They never carry the father's name. They also never carry the husband's name. So they are free. They never walk in anyone's shadows throughout their lifetime. And that gives them ownership and self-belief. But what upset the African women being equal and superior to their men was colonization. I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, we can't keep talking about colonization. But remember, the past dictates the future.
Mm-hmm.
So colonization came in and upset what we used to call a subsistence economy that the African people then used to depend on. This is where the husband and wife and of course the children would all go together to the fields until the land grow their own food. They ate off the land and grow their own food. But when colonization came, they insisted on men going out of the house to go and work. If you have read the Barack Obama's book on Dreams of My Father, he has mentioned that, not in the way that I mentioned it, but there's a chapter in there where he talks about whether it's his grandfather or great-grandfather, where suddenly you're sitting in his hut with his wife, and these colonialists came, knocked at the door, and they told him, first of all, that he's got to start paying tax for this hut that he had built on himself on his own God-given land. And he had asked, oh, but how do I pay tax? And they said, you have to come and work. And that's how they took Barack Obama's great-grandfather or father to go and become a cook. So that upset the whole thing of he now becoming the breadwinner of the men of African households and families had to become what was called the breadwinner, because now when we tipped from the subsistence economy into the monetary economy, which emphasized on having money as in coins and notes in your hands in order to eat. That's what tipped then the African women lose their power and lose their power and also even lose their claim to land. And it's just upset the status quo. But when you look back now and look at the world, even with this fight for gender equality, the country in the world that has the highest number of women in political participation at the moment, at about 64 to 68%, if my memory serves me right, is Rwanda. Rwanda followed,
Rwanda.
followed by most of the Scandinavian countries, Norway, Finland, Sweden, all of that. Those are Scandinavian countries. But Rwanda leads in the number of political participation of women and the number of women
Absolutely true.
in
Yes.
parliament. Yeah. But do you know why that is? When you look back, is that Rwanda had the genocide in 1994. And in that, after that genocide, the ratio of the population ratio tilted from tilted to 60 to 40. So the most people that were died or were killed were men. So after that, the country had more,
so there were more women.
men. Yeah. So these Rwandan women, before that, prior to the genocide, as a Rwandan woman, if you wanted to do anything, you needed the permission, whether to go into business, be involved in community activities, own land or own property. You needed the permission of your father. Your husband. If you're not married, you would have to ask your father. If your father is dead, you go have to look for your uncle. If your uncle is not there, you even have to find your brother, even if he was younger than you, as long as he was a man. So then these women of Rwanda found that they had no men in their family to run the things that they needed to do. They found themselves thrust into these leadership positions where they had then to run the uncle's farm, the husband's business, and the brothers, whatever it was, and also become leaders within their own families. So you see, for me, the example of Rwanda showed that African women, when given an opportunity, can rise to the occasion. They can become good leaders. As you look now, Rwanda is one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. It's almost the centerpiece of Africa, our trophy country in Africa that we show off to Africa. They've got everything there. They are even trying to do what is called the African Silicon Valley. They are way ahead of everybody else to do with the COVID-19. While here, even in the UK is still trying to use human doctors and everybody to test people and see whether they have the coronavirus. Rwanda has already got robots. They've already got
robots, yes.
They've already got artificial intelligence doing that for them. So, and also, as soon as they announced the coronavirus, the issue of the coronavirus, while all countries around the world were trying to decide what do we do, how do we handle this, Rwanda went out and built these sinks and taps along the streets where anybody who's walking by is able to wash their hands and sanitize their hands and all of this. So you see how powerful when African women are allowed in the decision-making process, what they can do and how far they can go. And these Rwandan women did not need to be taught how to become a leader. They just went back and dipped into themselves, into the African women that had lived before them in those matriarchal societies, which had prospered before the whole status quo was turned around. So each and every African woman just needs to reconnect with those spirits that, of course, still live within them. They are, in fact, there's an unwritten history. When you look around, Africa has its own women, its own suffragette movement. Its own suffragette movement that is not written about. Brilliant, positive role models like Ya Asantwa of Ghana. She's the one that stood up to the British when they were fighting for something called the Golden Stool of South Africa. We have also the Igbo women that fought the British in what is called the War of the, I can't remember what it was called. And coming more recently in 1956, look at all those women that rose up to go to march on Pretoria in South Africa, to fight against the injustice that the government had against women. So all of these African, we have Amina, which they made a film about her. Is it Zina, the warrior queen? That is based on Amina from Nigeria. This is the woman who, she even refused to get married and she never had children and she led an army. We have Cleopatra from Egypt.
Mm.
We have all these powerful African women that rose up. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, the last chance for Africa is African women. If African women were given a chance to rule and lead the continent, then the continent would be able to acquire to uh, to achieve its potential, also to use its many blessings in a proper way. Remember, the whole world economy, including the African economy, Africa after Africa joined this colonization and globalization and all of that, has been run on the perspectives of men. And the masculine spirit is about the self. It's about me, 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 me. The feminine spirit in whatever part of the world, of course, I'm aware that in each of us we have somewhere a bit of the feminine spirit and a bit of the masculine spirit, but it's more predominant. The feminine spirit is more predominant in women, and the masculine spirit is more predominant in men. So the feminine spirit is about building. It's about building the family, building the nation, building the community, building the family, building the community, building the nation, and building the world. So if African women were given a chance to rule Africa, I'm sure that Africa will achieve its prosperity and will achieve its rightful place in the world. Remember, a child born of a rich woman will, of course, lead an affluent life. A child born of a rich man depends who her mother is. There are some that have been born from very rich men, but they lead a poor life in the village. You see, but a woman will always take the child with them. Also, a woman, studies have shown that a child born of an educated woman will automatically be able to get the desired education that they should get. But this does not apply to children born of educated men or rich men. It depends whether that child is living with that rich man or not. Sometimes the men, even no matter how rich they are, they totally forget about the women that they had with somebody somewhere else, or even a previous wife. They've been, we've had cases where somebody's, I remember when we were young, and one day my mom was saying, well, you know, our neighbor, the husband has been transferred to another town, and he said he's taking a new wife with him and is leaving Mama Beauty with all the children behind. You see? So, but a woman, it's very rare. There are a few women, of course, that have left their children behind. But in most cases, as studies and research show, a woman will always carry the children along with them, and they'll make sure that the child will lead the life as good as the mother. And sometimes, even when the mother doesn't have that life, look at our women in the markets. Some of them are working very hard in the markets just so that they can educate their children. And sometimes they even forgo to eat food or buy a new chitenge or a new wrap, as you might call it in English, just as long as their child can be educated and have a better life than they do have. So if women in Africa, and the past, my last point, I could go on and on about this, but my last point is that the past decade or so,
yes, Africa, but now I have another interview.
Yeah, the past decade or so, Africa has been experiencing, out of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world, 6 have been in Africa. Most of the African countries have had very high economic growth over the past decade, but this has not trickled down into the community. While the economies were rising, the education and health provision levels were going down, and the poverty levels were rising as well. So this is because of the I don't know, the thinking of our male counterparts, so to speak.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador. And I've learned something from you today, that for me as a woman to go forward and to focus on the future, I need to refer back to my African roots. So thank you so much for joining me today on Live Chat with Josie. Definitely we'll catch up again for another part 2, because I know you still have a lot to say, but for
Yes.
this
Yeah.
particular time, I would like to just thank you for coming to the platform and wish you all the best. I mean, let those accolades keep coming.
Thank you so much, Josie. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and congratulations on all that you are doing. Of course, you are one of the people that are a great inspiration to your own generation, and you need to keep it up. And of course, keep using this platform to highlight the issues that are happening in the African community, and of course, to keep reminding the African women that they have the power within them to drive Africa to the place that Africa needs to be.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador. And to all the viewers, we thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you, Josie.